All right. We can move then directly into the presentation. We're very fortunate this evening to have a presentation, an earlier version of which I understand was given at the Pedestrian Safety Summit. Is that, if I got the right title, the Pedestrian Safety Summit? The presentation concerns pedestrian issues at the Crossroads, and as I'm sure we'll hear, the Crossroads is actually not only one of the most dangerous locations for pedestrians in this area, it's actually one of the most dangerous locations in the state. And so I'm sure we'll hear more about that. It's an area that the City of Takoma Park has been very concerned about, and Erwin Mack, who is the Executive Director of the CDA, is going to lead the presentation. So the council's going to, I see you've got the projector lined up, so I assume we're going to go sit in the first row of chairs so we can actually see the presentation. Thank you.
Mayor Porter, council members, thank you for the opportunity of sharing something that's been going on for the last 5 years. This presentation was requested by the State Maryland Safety Highway Office early this year, and when they asked me to make a presentation in front of a couple of hundred people from all over the state of Maryland, it actually concerned me a bit that I could just stand up and talk for a half hour and have anybody take something away with them. And what occurred to me, I said, this really needs to be a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't know how to make a PowerPoint presentation. I just know there's a keyboard in front of a screen on my desk, and I don't know what else that keyboard does. Besides that, I had a tremendous ally in an organization called CSAFE, and I said to the Maryland Highway Safety Office, may I bring in a partner with me to make a joint presentation? And they said, certainly, why not? So Mary Kendall, director of CSAFE, and Gretchen Hilberger, Montgomery County representative for CSAFE, became my guardian angels and my guidance, and it's to them that we have a PowerPoint presentation, because if it had been left up to me, I'd be still sharpening my pencil in a Boston pencil sharpener. Remember, this was given to a group of people who had no clue where the intersection called the Crossroads is. So some of this will be repetitious to you, but it will go past that quickly without having to explain about it. As you know, the Takoma-Langley Crossroads had this sign installed just about 18 years ago, and it's still the only major sign of welcome to Takoma Park, and looking forward to signage that the city is going to do. And we're going to do this kind of an elementary fashion, because normally Mary's staying next to me, so I'm going to have to say beep or something for the next slide. Go ahead. Yeah, as a beep. This is an actual site. A 31-year-old Latino lady stepped off the curb approximately at this pole in front of what's now called the COP building in Prince George's County, near what used to be the Toys R Us. She was killed instantly. But we had 8 predecessors to that, and it simply became a burden that the Crossroads couldn't handle, commercially speaking, residentially speaking, and as God-fearing people. We had to do something about it. So we got to thinking about what could we do to help persuade people to be more safe. Takoma-Langley Crossroads is this intersection, of course, where you're all familiar with it, so we won't have to dwell on that. But it's where 2 counties, a city, and 3 police forces come together. It was labeled the 3rd most dangerous intersection, according to State Farm Insurance, in 2003. The only 2 that were more dangerous was Lockwood and New Hampshire in the Silver Spring area, and one that was significantly more dangerous in the city of Baltimore. It's a transient community. The majority of the residents are apartment dwellers. It's also referred to as Maryland's International Corridor due to its obvious cultural diversity. We have incredible traffic, and these are not my figures. I received these from SHA, and we just last week upgraded this to the newest figures that the sector plan is showing, that 90,000 vehicles a day pass through the Crossroads. That's an incredible challenge for pedestrians. It has the largest concentration of resident pedestrians in the state of Maryland. Notice the word concentration is underlined. That doesn't mean there are more people who cross the streets here than anywhere else. It simply means in the smallest amount of space considered to be a half a mile from the Crossroads. There are certainly more people in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., et cetera, but in the state of Maryland, we have the most pedestrians. We have 3,500 people who get on and off buses in the Crossroads. Again, not my figures. MTA, Ride-On, and others. And 15,000 bus riders go through the Crossroads daily. 61 buses an hour go through the Crossroads at peak time. You can see 3 buses lined up there. By the way, Mary and I and Gretchen took all these pictures, so we're not complaining about the perfection of them. We're trying to make a point of concentration of challenges. What happened in the Crossroads? In December 2002, 2 mothers and 2 infants were involved in a pedestrian accident. Both infants were killed. That happened to have been just across the street from where the telephone pole has the cross that you saw earlier. And it really, really stirred me up. 2 young women in their early 20s, one carrying an infant, one pushing a stroller, for some ungodly, unknown reason, stepped out in front of a car, and the same car hit all 4 of them simultaneously, killing one child immediately. Some of you will remember this, and the other one died shortly in the hospital. We've had numerous pedestrian driver accidents and then 9 pedestrian fatalities. In this picture, however, a shocker took place. This was happening during an event that CSAFE will talk about shortly. We were there helping CSAFE direct pedestrians across the street safely, and I looked over, and exactly the same spot where this original incident occurred, 2 women, hard for you to see here, one pushing a stroller with 2 children in it, holding a child, and another lady behind her with 2 children, came off the curb doing exactly the same thing that had happened 5 years before. I was stunned, absolutely stunned. And Gretchen is right here, and Letitia Galeas from the University of Maryland, both of whom are bilingual. I'm not. I would have said words that wouldn't have required bilingual interpretation if I'd been any closer. But they really gave them a scolding. Yet they thought nothing of it because they simply wanted to get across the street. So you can see why our concern. Next. We are a business association of 158 businesses. We talked about what should we do to make a contribution to in the interest of pedestrian safety, and Dr. Bill Hanna of the University of Maryland and I put together a safety tip sheet for resident pedestrians within the Crossroads in English, innocently enough in English. We were stunned to find that Lori Kelly, who's well known to many of you here, found this sheet and said it's a good idea, but it won't work without Spanish. but even if you have a translation of it, the majority of the people who receive it can't read in any language. So we were stunned as to what to do. We decided to sponsor a K-5 educational poster campaign, and at the same time formed a pedestrian safety committee, which led to the forming of the only multi-jurisdictional pedestrian safety committee in the state of Maryland, abbreviations of MPSC. When we started out as a small group, we found other people hearing about it called and said, may we join you? To the point that we now have people, as many as 44 arrived last month at a meeting, and we solicit or send invitations, I should say, to some 60 people, but that many care, and they come from every jurisdiction, as you'll see in a moment. The reason was to persuade city, county, and state to make necessary modifications to maximize mechanical pedestrian safety. And the purpose was to assess the pedestrian safety needs in the Takoma Langley Crossroads with multiple levels of government, the private sector, and faith-based communities, etc. These are the partners whom I won't read because there are 43 of them, but you'll notice that they're significant. We'll allow the slide just to be on long enough so you can get a good glance of the groups of people. These are not by name, but these are groups that want to be a part of it and have sent representatives to meet with us, from attorneys to bus driver coordinators to MTA to SHA to construction people to faith community to education. You couldn't ask for a better cross-section of people to meet regularly to express concern about pedestrian safety. In addition, I want to point out some people that are well known to you, and remember I'm personalizing this to Takoma Park. We have already mentioned Gretchen Hilberger. We mentioned Mary Kendall. We mentioned Ilona Blanchard, who works for the city, and David Souls. And all through this whole thing, the Takoma Park Police Department has been an incredible ally in conjunction with Montgomery County's Police Department, Prince George's County's Police Department, and the University of Maryland's Police Department, all of whom said, we can learn from each other, let's work together. We identified needs that were absolutely foreign to the intersection. We couldn't believe when we got serious about this thing how poorly the signals, the crosswalks, the bus stops were coordinated. The word coordination, as a matter of fact, didn't exist. And so I outlined why we wanted the following: align the crosswalks and traffic signals. We wanted to install median fencing, although that originally became a very, very volatile issue. And a great deal of discussion. In fact, some people got very warm about looking like Guantanamo. This was before the fence at Longwood, before the fence over at Prince George's Mall, which now proved to be eminently successful. We were there first, but they got their fences first, and we'll explain that why in a moment. So finally, the conclusion was that there would be no option but to put in a fence at the median emanating some 1,000 feet from the crosswalks in all four directions to force people to use best practices in crossing the street. We wanted to educate resident pedestrians, promote traffic and pedestrian law enforcement, both notice drivers and pedestrians. And we certainly wanted to improve and provide bus shelters. Go ahead. We found to our surprise that the state conceded most of what we wanted, although it took a while. And to our really surprise, the former lieutenant governor came to the Crossroads a year and a half ago and provided a surprise announcement that the state was not only going to do the pedestrian safety improvements, but was going to put in a transit center. This transit center, as I'm sure you know, is going to be at the location where the current Taco Bell is. The reasons that we are pleased is that we now have the following median improvements. This is an aged picture. In these recesses around this middle raised area are brick-like formations called stamped concrete. So it gives it a nice red brick look, although it's not brick. The fence itself, when it's installed, will only be 4 feet on top of this center divider, so that it isn't going to be an 8-foot-high fence looking incredibly like a Guantanamo. But unfortunately, none of the fencing is going to go in until University Boulevard and New Hampshire are completed, in terms of median improvements, curb improvements, and surface improvements, which means that it'll be at least another year before a fence is installed, since they're just barely starting on New Hampshire Avenue now. The state provided funds, and both counties dedicated $2.5 million in addition to the $10 million by the state of Maryland, and then education and enforcement needs were to be given by CSAFE. One of the things that I stressed in the meetings that I've chaired for the last 5 years is that we wanted partners from these 43 people to do pedestrian safety efforts in their own right. And how will you do what you're going to do, whether you are part of a faith community, whether you're part of a police department, whether you're part of the educational system? And to my pleasant surprise, CSAFE became the most absolute supporter in the whole program. And Mary's here to tell you how CSAFE responded to the request of my challenge to the group as a quarterly meeting basis. What are you going to do about pedestrian safety in the Crossroads?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving Erwin and I the time to provide this presentation to you. And as Erwin said, CSAFE did respond to the education and enforcement needs that were identified by the Multi-jurisdictional Pedestrian Safety Committee. However, there were other organizations that responded as well, and I'd like to highlight the importance of International Walk to School Day, which just recently occurred at Piney Branch Elementary Middle School, and also takes place in the Takoma Langley Crossroads at Langley Park McCormick Elementary School, which is coordinated by Lori Kelly. And also, the City of Takoma Park Department of Housing and Community Development every year submits a grant application to the Safe Routes to School program, which also provides a lot of additional resources needed in the Takoma Park community to enhance pedestrian safety. In this first slide, we just talk about what is CSAFE, and I think everyone in this room is familiar with what CSAFE is, but what's most important is how it is that CSAFE actually achieves our goals and objectives. And we only have 2 staff in our office, but we do have many partners. And those partners range from the local government, partners from educational institutions, from residential properties, from the state government, from community and nonprofit organizations, from local businesses, and also national organizations. We have worked with over 46 partners since we've existed in 2001. And how it is that CSAFE responded to the needs that were identified by the Multi-jurisdictional Pedestrian Safety Committee is that we coordinated joint enforcement and educational initiatives. And there was participation from 3 different police departments, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Takoma Park, and many volunteers from multiple agencies and organizations. We've coordinated a total of 5 initiatives since 2003, and the purpose of every event has always been to increase resident and driver awareness of pedestrian safety. And one thing that I'd like to point out in this picture is all of the pictures that we took really tried to depict the need for education, awareness, and enforcement in the Crossroads. It's a little difficult to see, but there's a bus that's going through that just took the turn here, and there's a resident or a pedestrian crossing directly behind the bus, which just doesn't seem very safe, especially in that intersection. So what do we do during these multi-jurisdictional pedestrian safety activities? Well, during these activities, police play both a community policing role and an enforcement role. As you can see in the picture, the officers are distributing educational brochures. However, they also end up issuing hundreds of warrants and, hundreds of citations and warnings to drivers and pedestrians. Of course, occasionally what also happens during these pedestrian safety activities is police will end up serving warrants and occasionally be forced to make an on-scene arrest. So, sure. What happened here is this was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were in the parking lot by the old Toys R Us building. A woman, a Hispanic woman, she's in the back talking to the officer. A Hispanic woman was walking through the parking lot towards a large group of police officers. There were at least 20, 25 police officers standing in the parking lot getting briefed about the activity. And this gentleman who is in the center of a large group of police officers, yes, he's being arrested, he assaulted her and threatened her with a pen, pointing us as if he were to stab her with a pen. So this Hispanic woman felt safe enough to come over to the police officers and report the incident that just occurred. And instantly the officers jumped into action and made that on-scene arrest. We felt that was a successful day because the police were in high visibility in the community, and they were able to achieve more than just one goal in that day. Next slide, question. Okay. So also, not only are police in the community on that day during our activities, but we also had many, many, many volunteers. Over the years, we have had hundreds of volunteers participate in our pedestrian safety activities. The volunteers will distribute educational literature. Our volunteers speak multiple languages, which is very important in the international corridor, because they're the ones who can reach the entire community, not just one particular race, culture, or language. The volunteers also encourage resident and visitor pedestrians to cross safely. So now, just to provide everyone with a little bit of a better flavor as to what we do during these events, there's just a series of pictures taken from from the pedestrian safety activities.
Let me interject something in here. Stay with me, Mary. The president of Columbia Union College is with us tonight representing his institution, Dr. Gaspar Colon, sitting in the front row. We welcome you and show you that your students were active. They really weren't playing hooky that day. And then while we have the opportunity of thanking other people, Dr. John Wagner represents the faith community on the Multi-jurisdictional Pedestrian Safety Committee. So that plus the chief here, you have at least 5 members of that committee that are here this evening.
So that's a picture of Columbia Union College students, and every year they've participated and assisted us in distributing brochures. The next picture is a picture from more or less demonstrating how the enforcement operation happens. That's Sergeant Tom Harmon from the Montgomery County Police Department waiting to cross the street in the crosswalk, and then what he does is if a vehicle fails to yield to him while he is crossing, then farther down the street an officer will pull the vehicle over and typically give them a warning.
Again, this being a shared presentation, something unique about this happens to be in front of the Safeway. And if you are familiar at all with the jurisdiction of the Crossroads, Montgomery County only has half of the street. So Sergeant Tom has to stop in the middle of the street and reverse himself and go back because the rest of the street's in Prince George's County. It took us a while to work that out, but Prince George's County then realized that they needed to cooperate, and they put an officer on their side of the street so that we could cover the entire University Boulevard instead of just half of it.
Okay, and this scene is really important because not only do we educate hundreds of people in the street on the day of the activities, we also educate the thousands who end up watching TV. And we have had great participation, especially from the Hispanic media during these pedestrian safety activities, and they just help us get out the message about the importance of crosswalk safety. That's Gretchen. Okay, and also sometimes we like to have a bit of a holiday theme during our pedestrian safety activities. On this day, it wasn't looks like Santa Claus, but it really wasn't Santa Claus coming down the street. It was Irwin Mack coming down New Hampshire Avenue. Next slide. And here are some scenes of our volunteers in action. We have very proactive community volunteers who like to get involved. This day they're just directing a pedestrian to use the crosswalk. And here's another scene of another one of our volunteers. You can see wearing the safety vest that is stopping somebody after he crossed the street unsafely to talk to him about what it is he did and why it's important to use the crosswalk. And there are some future challenges for both the Multi-jurisdictional Pedestrian Safety Committee and C-Safe and the Crossroads. Is that being that the Crossroads is such a transient and culturally diverse community, the community capacity building in the area really needs to be sustained. On average, the majority of the residents in the Crossroads live there from 1 to 3 years. And that's why our efforts need to be continued and sustained. And we'd also like to expand this effort beyond the Crossroads because there are other communities that are in need of the same awareness, education, and enforcement.
Last slide. This is just the contact information that we shared with those who didn't know much about us. And you can see the names of the 3 people who are responsible for this PowerPoint presentation. We are asking you as a city council to continue your good work in helping with pedestrian safety throughout the city, but in particular the Crossroads. And we found that we have to be consistent in our approach to the bodies who can help us, because unless you're persistent, other people's push gets ahead of yours. And for those of you who know me, my motto has been, I'm not a pest, I'm responsibly persistent. And over the years, that has paid dividends as long as it wasn't for personal gain. And we thank you for having watched what's happening at the Crossroads.
Thank you. I appreciate that presentation, Erwin and Mary, even though it has been some months since you first gave it. Unfortunately, it's still very current in terms of the issues. And I think, I think I've been to a couple of the events that you've held, and they're always very well attended and always very good events. And I would just like to bring to the council's and everyone else's attention something else that actually happened at that same summit. At that summit, they presented, I believe it was their first, let's see, the first ever, and I'm looking for the proper name, the diversity in, I'm sorry, I should have underlined this. Award to Erwin Mack, the winner of the first ever 2000 Diversity in Traffic Safety Award. This was given to Erwin Mack for his work in the Crossroads at this Diversity in Traffic Safety Summit. And I'd like to read the what it says on their certificate. It says, Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate is presented March 26, 2007 to Erwin H. Mack in recognition for your invaluable contribution to traffic safety, exceptional commitment to Maryland's diverse community, and leadership of the Multi-jurisdictional Pedestrian Safety Committee. And that was actually presented by Neil Peterson, who is the director, the administrator of the State Highway Administration. And we are very proud that Erwin Mack, who has been a member of, was the founder on the board of, until he retired, and in his retirement he was the executive director of the Crossroads Development Authority. So you basically have been the Crossroads Development Authority for many, many years. And I appreciate all the work that you've done. And I think that the story you told about recognizing the need for this effort on pedestrian safety and creating an entity that could carry forward that work is typical of a lot of things that you've done in the Crossroads. It is a place of a lot of challenge. You mentioned the traffic. You also mentioned the 3 jurisdictions that come together at the Crossroads. And actually the 3 jurisdictions I know have always been a challenge. The reason that the CDA does not cross University Boulevard is because of an early challenge that you faced from the tri-jurisdictional nature of the Crossroads. But you have really done a lot of work with that, and not just in traffic safety, but in many other aspects of that. And with that, I would like to go on to our first item, which is quite relevant. We wanted to do a couple of things this evening. One was to recognize the 20th anniversary of the Takoma Langley CDA, and the other is to most especially recognize Erwin Mack. As I said, Erwin was the founder of the CDA over considerable obstacles 20 years ago. He has, I believe you were on the board of directors since the very beginning up until your recent retirement, and then once you retired from your business, you were no longer eligible to be on the board because you were no longer a business member of the CDA. And so Erwin retired to become the executive director. Many people wouldn't call that retirement, but I suppose by comparison it is. And so I'd like to read this resolution that I'm going to put before the council. Recognizing the 20th anniversary of the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority and Erwin Mack as founder and executive director. Whereas the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Corporation was authorized by ordinance of the City Council in 1987 for the purposes of promoting and marketing the businesses which make up the Takoma Langley Crossroads Commercial District. And whereas the Takoma Langley Crossroads is the community's largest and most diverse commercial center with more than 3,500,000 square feet of retail and office space located at the intersection of University Boulevard and New Hampshire Avenue. And whereas this November marks the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Association. And whereas through the dedicated efforts of the CDA, its board of directors, and its executive director, the organization has successfully advocated for more effective crime prevention, programming, pedestrian safety improvements, stronger code enforcement measures, streetscape improvements, and the funding and resources necessary to maintain the economic vitality of the business community. That's quite a few things. It's squeezed into one whereas, but it's actually a lot of work over many, many years. Whereas much of the CDA's success is due to the tireless and determined efforts of its founder and executive director, Mr. Erwin Mack, who is, as he is known to declare, and he mentioned this just earlier this evening, he is not a pest, just responsibly persistent. And whereas the community as a whole and the Takoma Langley Crossroads businesses in particular have benefited greatly from the work of the CDA and Mr. Erwin Mack. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Takoma Park, Maryland celebrates the 20th anniversary of the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority and its accomplishments. And be it further resolved that the Council applauds the hard work and determination of Erwin Mack and recognizes his contributions to the success of the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority. I want to move this resolution and place it before the council. It's been moved and seconded. Is there anyone else? What I want to do with Erwin is we will, if the resolution passes, we'll give you a chance to add anything you would care to at the end. But is there anyone else who would like to address the resolution at this time?
When I came to Takoma Park, City Manager Matthew said there were several people I needed to meet immediately. And in the first week, one of the first people I met was Erwin Mack for lunch. I was pretty lucky on that day because I learned later that I only saw a part of Erwin. He was sick that day, was kind of calm and collective and rather mild-mannered, which Barbara informed me later, that's not the Erwin you're going to get to know. And I've got to know Erwin over the last 8 months. If something's happening down in the Crossroads, he generally knows even before our dispatchers is on the phone or on an email to me what's happening, or he knows and tells me so I can be updated. He's been a pleasure to work with. He is persistent, but he's a partner that's fun to work with because when you have something and you ask him for his help, he knows where to go and he knows who to call, and he is persistent. We had a problem with some day laborers and a trespassing problem. He helped me get the information I needed so I could inform my officers to make us better informed in what we were doing down there. He was a great help in that. We've worked together on pedestrian problems. If there's a problem down there, just about every business owner will go to Irwin. He'll come to me and we can work together. He's a partner for the city of Takoma Park, and especially for its police department and the C-Safe program, and I just want to thank him and commend him for a job that I know he's doing long before I got here, and he'll probably be doing it long after I leave.
Anyone else?
Gaspar Colon from Columbia Union College. About 7.5 years ago, I started teaching at Columbia Union College and developing a program in metropolitan ministry for our theology and religion majors, and encouraging future church workers and future professionals to really take seriously working in the metropolitan areas and the issues that metropolitan areas face. And it didn't take long for Irwin Mack to discover that I was there and visit me. You can't sneak into this community without somehow Irwin Mack finding you out and involving you in every aspect of the community's needs, including the safety issues. And I really appreciated that, because he's gotten me involved in more things than I'd like to admit to.
Well, thank you, Dr. Colon. We appreciate your being here. Is there anyone else that would like to add anything? Is there anything else that the council would like to add? Bruce?
Yeah, I want to recognize Irwin's persistence and also his expertise at working the multi-jurisdiction aspect of just about everything he does. A lot of people know that Takoma Park is surrounded by other larger jurisdictions, and that's one of the things that we on the council and most people in dealing with issues that we have to deal with know that it takes some time and effort to work those connections, make those connections, and kind of know how to work all that together. And Irwin is a master, and it's a real skill, and that combined with persistence makes for some wonderful results, and we saw some evidence of that tonight. And it's a real talent and a real skill, and you've done a great job, and hope you continue to do a great job.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. We'd just like to recall when I first met Irwin Mack, I was new in community activism, and shortly thereafter I was new on the city council. And through the years since I first met Mr. Mack, I've learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot about how to address the issues that we see in our community. Whereas a lot of people bring problems to the podium here and ask us to solve their problems, Mr. Mack did that, but he also presented his ideas for how to solve those problems. And I see his persistence not being coming back to the podium time after time with the same thing and the same ideas, but his persistence was when he found that progress wasn't being made. He found new ways to approach it. He looked for new resources. He didn't wait for us to do something or someone else to do something. He just kept plodding ahead, and it was like, I need your help with this, and I'm going to keep reminding you I need your help, but I'm going to go on. The party's going to go on without you if you don't get on board. And it's been fun watching Mr. Mack, and I hope to learn many more things in his work, because he's very successful. You look at what the Takoma Langley Crossroads area is now compared to where it was 5 years ago. It's grown incredibly, and it's a much better neighborhood because of the work that Mr. Mack has done and the people that he's brought into the fold with him. And I thank you.
I just wanted to say that I think that the community is much better because you're here, and thank you for everything that you do. There's a young man who lived on my street who was hit by a car when he was in a crosswalk and was killed, and his family deeply misses him. There was a young boy in the household, and this young man was his uncle, but he was also his male role model in the household that was, in that age range. And I know that there are a lot of people whose lives are impacted by the things that you have done to improve the community that don't even know it. And so I'm grateful that you're there and helping to reduce those kinds of incidents and just make the community better and safer and help protect those of us that are here. So I thank you for that, and I thank you on behalf of the constituents that I have for that as well.
Yes, I also want to thank Erwin for his great presence in our community and the many gifts that he shares with this council and the residents and the business people. You're really one of a kind, and I'm glad that we can recognize you today, and I'm very glad that you'll continue serving with the CBA.
Yeah, and I just, sitting up here, I thought of one more thing that I have to mention, and that is that you didn't just tilt at local jurisdictions in coming up with issues that had to be dealt with, but I recall changing the zip code, and that you had to deal with the postmaster, and you had to deal with federal officials and our representatives in Congress, and trying to get the zip codes aligned with the city border, so that businesses that were in Takoma Park, Montgomery County, did not have a Hyattsville, whatever the zip code is, 20783, which had difficulties for customers trying to get taxis called to pick them up in the CDA, and issues like that. There are really big issues that affect the quality of life for a lot of people, and you didn't shy away from that, and it's just indicative of the kind of thing that you tackle successfully.
I just wanted to add something to that. As we were working on the changing the zip code, which actually means changing the boundary of one of the post offices, one of the staff people, I don't remember who it was, that we contacted first, said, "Oh, don't even bother. This is, you're never going to get the post office to change boundaries. They just don't do that." And I remember thinking, you obviously don't know Erwin Mack. And I do remember that once it happened, and I believe it was somebody from Al Wynn's office, who was our congressional representative at that time, said, "Boy, this is the first time I've ever seen anybody be successful with one of these efforts." And we can chalk that up. It's one of the achievements that few people are able to accomplish, and being responsibly persistent, you actually got the post office boundary changed, which up against the post office, probably most people wouldn't have been able to do that. So.
And Erwin was also Santa Claus in a number of efforts, including various holiday parties for kids with the Recreation Department and the Police Department upstairs, and I know also over at the Recreation Center on New Hampshire Avenue. So a lot of effort in that.
Ward 4.
So just multifaceted. And I hope your head still fits in your hat.
The resolution is before the council. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. What I'd like to do, Erwin, is I'd like to have you come up here for a photo op, and then we'll let you add whatever you would care to add. Video camera off. Thank you very much for everything you've done. I really appreciate it. My pleasure. All the work you've done for CBA. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for an unexpected but a much appreciated period of time this evening in reminiscing. Nothing that I've done could be done without the partnership of many people. Many of them are sitting here. No one person can be successful until you have a team that works with you. And strangely enough, I want to recognize two people, one in particular, who's not expecting me to say what I'm going to say. My son Bill is sitting over here. Bill, stand up for a minute, please. Some people have never met you. During the 14 years that I owned Dennis Sleep Shop and Bill worked with me, had it not been for Bill's willingness to carry more of the load than ordinarily he would have, so that I could type on my Remington manual to get things going 23 years ago, we might not have made it. Scores and scores and scores of things that I wrote on that Remington manual until I finally got an IBM Selectric and thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And of course today it's so much easier on the computer. But it's because of Bill and his long-suffering mother, my first wife, Sylvia over here, who allowed me to spend extra evenings away from the house working on that typewriter, just because the community said, the local community at that time said, we want this, will you help us? And I appreciate the fact that my educational background in being a school teacher and ultimately a school principal allowed me to have the information necessary to work with boards, which many people haven't had the pleasure of doing. And that's not an easy thing because boards are very legalistic sometimes, and they expect to be and must be, and unless you can work with them, things don't get done. So thank you for having given me an opportunity, particularly in retirement years, to do things that are genuinely still a pleasure. And I have reservations for my walker to get on the first bus in the transit center when it eventually comes to the Crossroads. So thank you kindly for having been friends and co-workers and allowing me to be one of the same.
Well, thank you, Irwin.